I'm Elena, 32 years old, standing in my parents' foyer clutching a bottle of expensive wine and homemade gingerbread cookies, the scent of glazed ham drifting from the kitchen as holiday music plays softly in the background. Despite years of family disappointment, I arrived with hope in my heart that this Christmas might finally be different. I never imagined I'd end up back in my car, mascara running down my cheeks, after my brother Marcus sneered and asked why they'd waste a chair on me. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below, and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever felt like the family scapegoat during what should be the most wonderful time of year. Growing up as the youngest of 3 children, with Marcus, 35, and my sister Sophia, 33, taught me early that family love isn't always distributed equally. From the moment I was born, our parents David and Catherine Morrison had established a clear pecking order. Marcus was the crown prince, destined for greatness in their eyes. Sophia was the perfect daughter, beautiful and compliant. And I was the afterthought, the mistake they never quite knew what to do with. My earliest memory of feeling excluded dates back to kindergarten. I had worked for weeks on a science project about butterflies, carefully drawing each stage of metamorphosis and writing out explanations in my best 5-year-old handwriting. The night before it was due, I found my project destroyed, torn into tiny pieces and scattered across my bedroom floor like confetti. When my parents rushed in to see what had happened, Marcus was already there, shaking his head with practiced concern. Elena got frustrated because her project wasn't good enough, he lied smoothly. I tried to help her fix it, but she had a tantrum and ripped it up herself. Despite my tearful protests and desperate explanations, my parents believed him. They always did. That night, I cried myself to sleep while my father stayed up late helping Marcus perfect his volcano model. The next day, Marcus won the science fair while I sat empty-handed, learning my first lesson about my place in the family hierarchy. This pattern persisted throughout my childhood. When I made the honor roll in 3rd grade, Marcus told our parents I had been cheating off my desk partner. When I was invited to my first sleepover party in 6th grade, Marcus casually mentioned to Mom that he'd heard the family had questionable values. My invitation was quietly withdrawn when Mom called to express her concerns. High school should have been my chance to shine independently, but family gatherings during breaks meant returning to the same toxic environment. During my junior year, I brought home my first boyfriend, Jake, a sweet boy from my chemistry class. Marcus spent the entire weekend regaling Jake with embarrassing stories about me, most of which were either grossly exaggerated or completely fabricated. Jake broke up with me the following Monday, saying he thought I had some issues to work through. After graduation, I secured a position at a prestigious marketing firm in downtown Seattle. I was proud of my accomplishments, but family dinners became exercises in invisibility. Whenever I tried to share my professional successes, Marcus would immediately redirect the conversation to his latest business venture. If I mentioned landing a new client, Marcus had just signed an even bigger deal. If I received a promotion, Marcus had just opened a second location for his consulting firm. My relationship with my cousin Jessica added another layer of complexity to family dynamics. We had been close as children, almost like sisters, until our grandfather passed away 3 years ago. Grandpa had always promised me his vintage watch, a family heirloom that had belonged to his father. Throughout my childhood, he would tell me stories about how his grandfather had carried it through World War I, how it had survived through decades of family history. The day after Grandpa's funeral, I went to his house to collect the watch, only to discover it missing. Later that evening, I saw it on Marcus's wrist at the family gathering. When I confronted him, he claimed Grandpa had given it to him privately, despite knowing this was impossible since I had been Grandpa's primary caregiver during his final months. When I brought this up with my parents, my mother suggested I was confused by grief, while my father told me not to create drama during such a difficult time. Every family gathering since then, Marcus has worn that watch, a constant reminder of what was stolen from me and how little my family valued my word against his. Last year had been particularly devastating. I had received a major promotion at work, becoming the youngest creative director in my company's history. I had moved into a beautiful loft apartment with exposed brick walls and floor-to-ceiling windows. I had been featured in a local business magazine for my innovative marketing campaigns. Yet at Thanksgiving dinner, my family spent the entire meal discussing Marcus's new house and Sophia's engagement. My promotion was mentioned only briefly, with my mother quickly changing the subject to ask Marcus about his golf handicap. After that Thanksgiving, I started seeing Dr. Reynolds, a therapist who specialized in family trauma. Our sessions helped me identify the patterns of manipulation and emotional neglect I had normalized for decades. Dr. Reynolds suggested I consider setting boundaries, perhaps even taking a break from family gatherings until I felt emotionally stronger. But they're still my family, I had insisted. If I could just make them see the real me, maybe things could change. Dr. Reynolds' expression had been compassionate, but skeptical. Sometimes the family we choose is more meaningful than the family we're born into, she said gently. Still, I decided to try one more time with Christmas. I spent weeks preparing thoughtful gifts. For my mother, a silk scarf in her favorite shade of burgundy. For my father, a rare book about vintage cars that I knew he'd been wanting. For Sophia, a custom photo album documenting her wedding planning journey. And for Marcus, something special that had required careful planning and documentation. Hidden beneath the elegant wrapping paper was a leather portfolio containing evidence I had painstakingly gathered over the years. Emails he had sent to family members undermining my credibility, screenshots of text messages where he bragged to friends about manipulating our parents against me, a recording from last Christmas where he mockingly described how easy it was to make our family dismiss anything I said, and finally, a copy of Grandpa's will explicitly leaving the watch to me, which the family had never seen because Marcus had hidden it. I had debated for weeks about whether to bring this gift. Dr. Reynolds had warned me that confrontations rarely change deeply ingrained family dynamics, but some part of me needed to try one final time before potentially walking away forever. So on Christmas morning, I loaded my car with carefully wrapped presents, homemade gingerbread cookies using Grandpa's secret recipe, and hoped that perhaps this year would be different. I arrived at my parents' Tudor-style home at exactly 3 p.m., the designated time for Christmas dinner. The house looked like something from a holiday catalog, with twinkling lights outlining every window and doorframe, wreaths adorning every door, and 2 massive Christmas trees flanking the circular driveway. Before ringing the doorbell, I checked my appearance in my car's side mirror. I had spent extra time getting ready, wearing a deep navy dress that complemented my blonde hair, which I had styled in soft waves. My makeup was polished but natural. I looked professional, confident, the version of myself I wanted my family to finally see and respect. The door opened to reveal my mother, impeccable as always in a cream cashmere sweater and pearl necklace. "Elena," she said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "You're right on time." The observation felt more like criticism than acknowledgement. I stepped inside, arms full of gifts and cookies. My mother accepted the cookies with a perfunctory thank you before disappearing into the kitchen without offering to help with the presents or take my coat. In the living room, a completely different scene was unfolding. My father was enthusiastically embracing Sophia and her fiancé Daniel, laughing loudly at something Daniel had said. "That's my future son-in-law," he exclaimed, clapping Daniel on the back. Across the room, Marcus was holding court with our aunts and uncles, gesturing dramatically as they listened with rapt attention. His wife Amanda stood beside him, her hand resting possessively on his arm, her diamond tennis bracelet catching the light from the crystal chandelier. "Elena's here," my mother announced flatly as she returned from the kitchen. A few heads turned my way, offering polite smiles and distracted waves before immediately returning to their conversations. Only Sophia broke away to give me a brief hug. "Cute dress," she said before lowering her voice. "Just so you know, Mom's been stressed about dinner timing all day, so maybe don't mention work stuff. Last time you talked about your promotion, she complained about headaches for days." Before I could respond, Jessica entered the room with her new boyfriend. "Everyone, this is Connor," she announced. The family immediately swarmed around them, asking questions and offering drinks. Around Jessica's neck, catching the light from the Christmas tree, hung a delicate gold necklace that had belonged to our grandmother, another family heirloom that had mysteriously found its way to someone else after a funeral. I placed my gifts under the tree and moved toward a group of relatives, attempting to join their conversation about recent travel plans. My Aunt Patricia was describing her cruise to the Mediterranean when I approached. "It sounds incredible," I said during a pause. "I've been researching sustainable travel options for my next vacation." My aunt glanced at me, nodded vaguely, then turned slightly to exclude me from the circle. Anyway, as I was saying about the Greek islands, this pattern repeated throughout the pre-dinner mingling. Conversations died when I approached. Family members excused themselves to refresh their drinks. Questions about my life were superficial and brief, immediately redirected to more interesting topics. When it was time for family photos, my mother organized everyone in front of the marble fireplace. Marcus and Amanda took center stage. She directed Sophia and Daniel to the left, Jessica and Connor to the right. She positioned aunts, uncles, and cousins around them, then stepped back to assess the arrangement. "Mom," I said quietly, "where should I stand?" She blinked as if just remembering I was there. "Oh, Elena, could you actually take the photos? You're so good with that sort of thing." I swallowed the lump in my throat and took the camera, capturing multiple shots of my smiling family while remaining invisible behind the lens. Later, as I helped arrange appetizers on the dining room sideboard, Marcus approached. He looked me up and down with that familiar smirk. "Navy is certainly a bold choice for your complexion," he said just loudly enough for nearby relatives to hear. "But I guess marketing firms don't exactly prioritize fashion sense, do they?" I forced a smile. "How's the consulting business, Marcus? I heard the economy has made things challenging for small firms." His eyes narrowed slightly. "For amateurs, maybe. My client list has never been stronger." He leaned closer, voice dropping. "Speaking of struggles, how's your therapy going? Mom mentioned you've been getting professional help for your issues." Heat rushed to my face. My therapy sessions were private. I had only confided in my mother during a rare moment when she had seemed genuinely concerned about my well-being. "I'm doing very well, thank you," I replied stiffly, arranging stuffed mushrooms on a platter with more force than necessary. Marcus chuckled, satisfied at having provoked a reaction. "Good to hear. We're all very concerned about your stability." He patted my shoulder condescendingly before rejoining his wife across the room. I spotted Jessica touching the gold necklace as she laughed at something Connor said. Our eyes met briefly, and I thought I detected a flicker of guilt before she deliberately turned away. As the afternoon wore on, I began noticing something odd about the dining room setup. My mother was a perfectionist when it came to holiday entertaining, always using her finest china, crystal glasses, and silver place settings for Christmas dinner. The table was already set beautifully with the holiday china, matching napkins folded into elegant fans, and name cards at each place setting. I casually walked around the table, counting places and looking for my name. 12 settings. 12 chairs. 13 people, including me. My name card was nowhere to be found. "Mom," I asked, finding her in the kitchen basting the ham, "I don't see my place card at the table." She kept her eyes on the oven. "Don't worry about that now, Elena. Why don't you make yourself useful and refill the ice bucket?" An uneasy feeling settled in my stomach as I did as she asked. When I returned with the ice, I overheard my mother whispering to my aunt in the hallway. "I don't know why she's making such a fuss," my mother was saying. "It's not like she ever enjoys these gatherings anyway. Always sitting there with that sour expression on her face." "But Catherine," my aunt replied, "surely there's room to squeeze in one more chair?" My mother sighed dramatically. "David's been having back problems. He needs space at the table. And Marcus specifically requested that we keep things intimate this year. You know how he feels about Elena's attitude." They fell silent as they noticed me standing there, ice bucket in hand. My aunt had the grace to look embarrassed, while my mother simply took the ice and walked away. I retreated to the bathroom, locking the door behind me. Staring at my reflection, I wondered how I could have been so naive. I had come hoping for acceptance, for a place in my family, when they had already decided I didn't deserve one, literally. Taking a deep breath, I splashed cold water on my face and reapplied my lipstick. I had two choices: leave now and preserve what little dignity I had left, or stay and see this through to whatever humiliating conclusion awaited me. I thought about Marcus's gift sitting innocently under the tree. I thought about years of exclusion and gaslighting. I thought about Dr. Reynolds's words about chosen family. Then I straightened my shoulders, unlocked the bathroom door, and headed back to the living room. I would see this through one way or another. This Christmas would be different. Dinner is served. My mother's voice rang out from the dining room at precisely 6 p.m. Family members began migrating toward the delicious aromas, drinks in hand, conversations continuing without pause. The dining room was a vision of holiday perfection. The mahogany table gleamed under the soft light of the chandelier, which had been adorned with sprigs of holly and mistletoe. A gold and burgundy runner stretched down the center, decorated with pine cones, cinnamon sticks, and miniature ornaments. Tall burgundy candles in silver holders provided a warm, flickering glow that reflected off the crystal glasses at each place setting. The Christmas china, which my mother only used once a year, featured hand-painted poinsettias around cream-colored plates. Each napkin was folded into the shape of a Christmas star, with small gold napkin rings. Place cards written in my mother's elegant calligraphy marked each person's assigned seat. The centerpiece was a stunning arrangement of red roses, white orchids, and pine branches, professionally designed and delivered that morning. Everything was meticulously arranged, each detail considered and perfect. Everyone began finding their seats, exclaiming over the beauty of the table. My father took his place at the head with my mother at the foot. Marcus and Amanda were seated at my father's right hand, the position of honor. Sophia and Daniel sat at my mother's right. Jessica and Connor were placed across from Marcus and Amanda, while my aunts and uncles completed the arrangement. I stood awkwardly at the threshold of the dining room, waiting for someone to notice the obvious problem. No one did. Or rather, no one chose to acknowledge it. Finally, as everyone settled into their chairs, my Aunt Patricia glanced up at me still standing in the doorway. A look of discomfort crossed her face before she quickly looked away, suddenly very interested in straightening her napkin. "Mom," I said, my voice sounding strangely calm despite the pounding of my heart. "Where should I sit?" A hush fell over the table. My mother paused in the act of carving the ham, her expression momentarily frozen before shifting into a practiced smile. "Oh, Elena," she said lightly, as if addressing a minor inconvenience rather than a profound exclusion, "the table's quite full with everyone here. I thought you could eat in the car. It's just for today." The words hung in the air like icicles, sharp and cold. I felt as if I'd been slapped. Around the table, gazes dropped to plates. Wine glasses suddenly became fascinating objects of study. Then Marcus, emboldened by the silence, looked directly at me with that familiar smirk of superiority. "Why would we waste a chair on you?" he asked, his tone casual but his eyes gleaming with malice. The room seemed to tilt slightly. I gripped the doorframe to steady myself, looking around at each face, searching for anyone who would speak up for me. My father stared intently at his plate, methodically cutting a piece of ham without looking up. Sophia bit her lip, her eyes darting between me and Marcus, but she remained silent. Amanda had the decency to look uncomfortable, but she placed her hand over Marcus's on the table in a gesture of solidarity. Jessica touched the gold necklace at her throat, then quickly dropped her hand when she noticed me watching. Connor, clearly confused by the tension, looked to Jessica for explanation, but she simply shook her head slightly. My aunts and uncles exchanged glances, but said nothing. My mother continued serving food as if nothing unusual had happened, as if suggesting her daughter eat Christmas dinner alone in a cold car was perfectly normal. I looked around the table once more, taking in every detail. Everyone had a place. Everyone except me. Even Jessica, who had stolen something precious from me and never faced consequences, sat comfortably among family, accepted and included. My face burned with humiliation. My stomach felt hollow. I could feel tears threatening, but I refused to give Marcus the satisfaction of seeing me cry. Instead, I took a slow, deep breath, feeling something shift inside me. For years, I had sought approval from these people. I had made excuses for their behavior, blamed myself for not being lovable enough, tried harder and harder to earn a place in their hearts. And here was the literal manifestation of my position in the family all along. There was no room for me at their table. There never had been. I glanced toward the Christmas tree in the living room, where my carefully wrapped packages sat. Among them was Marcus's gift, the one I had debated for weeks about giving, the one that contained evidence of years of manipulation and cruelty. In that moment, standing excluded in the doorway of my childhood home while my family prepared to enjoy Christmas dinner without me, something crystallized in my mind. This wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment or an oversight. This was the culmination of a lifetime of being treated as less than, as unwanted, as the family member they tolerated rather than loved. And for the first time, I didn't feel the crushing weight of rejection. Instead, I felt something else entirely: clarity. I remembered placing Marcus's gift strategically before dinner, slipping the small envelope under his plate while helping set the table. No one had noticed. No one ever noticed what I did unless it was to criticize. I looked back at the table, at my brother's smug expression, at my mother's deliberate avoidance, at my father's cowardice, at Jessica wearing my grandmother's necklace, at the empty space where I should have been sitting, and I made a decision that would change everything. Standing in that doorway, excluded from my own family's Christmas dinner, I felt a strange calm descend over me. It was as if I was watching the scene from outside my body, seeing with perfect clarity what had been true all along. This wasn't new behavior. This was simply the most honest version of what had been happening my entire life. Memories flashed through my mind in rapid succession. Age 8, forgotten at school pickup because my parents were too busy attending Marcus's soccer tournament. Age 13, eating lunch alone in the library after Marcus told everyone I had a contagious skin condition. Age 17, not being allowed to attend my own graduation party because Marcus claimed he'd seen me drinking, a complete fabrication. My college graduation, where my parents left early because Marcus said he felt sick. Job promotions met with indifference. Holidays where my gifts were open last and with minimal enthusiasm. The pattern was undeniable. I had spent decades making excuses for their behavior, telling myself that if I just achieved more, spoke more eloquently, dressed more appropriately, somehow I would finally earn their love and respect. But standing there, watching them begin to eat as if my exclusion was the most natural thing in the world, I finally understood. Nothing I could ever do would be enough. Because the problem had never been me. A curious warmth spread through my chest, replacing the cold ache of rejection. It wasn't happiness exactly, it was something more powerful. Liberation. The freedom that comes with finally acknowledging a painful truth instead of running from it. Dr. Reynolds's words from our last session echoed in my mind. Elena, you keep trying to win a game that's rigged against you. The only winning move might be not to play. Under Marcus's plate sat the envelope I had carefully placed there earlier. Inside was evidence I had collected over years of his manipulation. Screenshots of text messages where he bragged to friends about turning our parents against me, emails he had sent to family members planting seeds of doubt about my character and stability, a recording from last Thanksgiving where he admitted to deliberately sabotaging my relationships, and a copy of Grandpa's will specifically leaving his watch to me, which the family had never seen because Marcus had intercepted it. I had gathered these pieces meticulously, initially planning to confront the entire family, to force them to see the truth about their golden boy. I had imagined tears, apologies, a dramatic reconciliation, the fantasy of finally being embraced as an equal member of the family. But now, looking at them all comfortable in their exclusion of me, I realized that fantasy had always been just that. Even with irrefutable evidence, they would find a way to excuse Marcus, to blame me, to maintain the family mythology they had invested in for decades. I considered my options. I could create a scene, dumping the evidence on the table and demanding acknowledgement. I could break down in tears, appealing to whatever shreds of empathy they might possess. I could grab Marcus's plate and throw it against the wall, decades of repressed anger finally finding release. But each of those scenarios gave them power over me. Each made me the unstable one, the problem to be managed. Each would reinforce the narrative Marcus had so carefully constructed. Or I could choose a different path. I could recognize that I deserved better than fighting for scraps of affection from people who had demonstrated time and again that they were incapable of giving it freely. I could acknowledge that family isn't just about blood relations, but about mutual respect and care. I could choose myself. In that moment, I made my decision. I would not beg for a seat at a table where I wasn't wanted. I would not expose Marcus's manipulations to people who had actively participated in my exclusion. I would not give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. Instead, I would leave them with something that would speak louder than any emotional outburst. I would leave them with the truth and the knowledge that I was done playing by their rules. The family continued eating, conversation gradually resuming as they collectively decided to ignore the uncomfortable scene. Marcus was telling some story about a difficult client, gesturing with his fork, reveling in being the center of attention as always. I took a deep breath and stepped forward, no longer waiting in the doorway, but entering the room with purpose. My movement caught their attention, conversations faltering as all eyes turned toward me. I walked directly to the Christmas tree and picked up my gift for Marcus. The room was utterly silent now, everyone watching with a mixture of confusion and apprehension. With measured steps, I approached the table, the wrapped package in my hands. I stood directly behind Marcus's chair, feeling a strange sense of power as he had to twist awkwardly to look up at me. For once, I was the one looking down at him. The dining room fell silent as I stood behind Marcus, gift in hand. My heart pounded, but my voice remained steady when I finally spoke. "Marcus," I said, my tone calm and clear, "I brought something special for you this Christmas." His expression shifted from annoyance to wariness. He knew me well enough to sense that something had changed, that this wasn't the same Elena who typically absorbed his cruelty with quiet hurt. "Can it wait until after dinner?" my mother interjected, her voice strained. "We've just started eating." "No," I replied simply. "It can't." I placed the elegantly wrapped box beside Marcus's plate. The paper was silver with subtle snowflakes, tied with a navy ribbon that matched his eyes that now regarded me with suspicion. "What is this?" he asked, not touching the package. "Open it," I suggested. "Or don't. But either way, check under your plate." Marcus's face paled slightly. His hand moved instinctively to the edge of his plate, but he hesitated. "What are you talking about?" my father demanded, finally finding his voice. "Elena, you're disrupting dinner." "I'm disrupting dinner?" I repeated, a small laugh escaping me. "Not the fact that you've all decided I should eat in my car? Not Marcus suggesting you'd be wasting a chair on me?" Uncomfortable glances were exchanged around the table. Sophia looked down at her lap. Jessica fidgeted with her napkin. "You're being dramatic," Marcus said, attempting to regain control. "It's just seating arrangements. Not everything is about you." "You're right," I agreed. "It's not about me. It's about you, Marcus. It always has been." I gestured toward his plate. "Go ahead. Look underneath." Something in my tone must have unsettled him, because Marcus actually pushed back his chair slightly. With obvious reluctance, he lifted his plate, revealing the cream-colored envelope beneath. The table watched in tense silence as he opened it and removed the contents. His face, always so controlled, so practiced at projecting confidence, visibly shifted as he scanned the first page. Color drained from his cheeks, then rushed back as anger replaced shock. "What is this?" he demanded, his voice tight. "The truth," I replied simply. "Something this family isn't particularly familiar with." His eyes darted back to the papers, then up to me, then around the table. For perhaps the first time in his life, Marcus Morrison was speechless. "What is it?" my mother asked, stretching to see across the table. "Nothing," Marcus said quickly, attempting to stuff the papers back into the envelope. "It's evidence," I said calmly. "Screenshots of texts where Marcus brags about turning you against me. Emails where he undermines me to family members. A recording from last Thanksgiving where he admits to lying about me for years." Amanda frowned and reached for the envelope. Let me see that. Marcus pulled it away from her. It's nothing. Elena's making things up, as usual. Am I? I asked. Then why are you hiding it? If I'm lying, show everyone. Marcus's jaw clenched. He knew he was caught. There's also a copy of Grandpa's will. I continued, looking directly at Jessica. The one specifically leaving his watch to me. Jessica's hand flew to the gold necklace around her neck. I didn't. He gave it to me, she stammered. No, he didn't, I said firmly. Marcus told you I didn't want it. He intercepted the will and convinced you that Grandpa had changed his mind. Jessica turned to Marcus, confusion and betrayal dawning on her face. Is that true? Marcus stood abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the hardwood floor. This is ridiculous. I'm not going to sit here and listen to these accusations. Then don't, I replied. But everyone should know that I've made copies of everything in that envelope. I'm done protecting this family's illusions about their golden boy. My father finally found his voice. Elena, that's enough. This is Christmas dinner, for God's sake. Yes, it is, I agreed. A dinner I wasn't welcome at. A family I've never truly been welcome in. I turned my attention back to Marcus, who was now gripping the envelope so tightly his knuckles had turned white. Check under your plate again, I instructed. With visible reluctance, he lifted his plate once more, revealing a small handwritten note I had placed beneath the envelope. Read it, I said. When Marcus didn't speak, I recited the words I had written hours earlier. This is the last time I will try to make you see me. The last time I will fight for a place in this family. I release you from the burden of pretending to care about me, and I release myself from the burden of seeking your approval. The silence that followed was profound. Around the table, expressions ranged from shock to discomfort to the beginning glimmers of understanding. I took a step back, surveying the scene one last time. The perfect table setting. The family gathered without me. The physical manifestation of what had always been emotionally true. Merry Christmas, I said quietly. Enjoy your dinner. With that, I turned and walked steadily through the living room, retrieving my coat and purse. No one followed me. No one called my name. As I opened the front door, I heard raised voices from the dining room, the beginning of what would undoubtedly be a complicated conversation. But it wouldn't be my conversation. Not anymore. The winter air was crisp against my face as I walked to my car. Snow had begun to fall while I was inside, dusting the world with a clean white blanket. I sat behind the wheel for a moment, watching the snowflakes swirl in the glow of the porch light. Then I started the engine, closed the car door behind me, and drove away from the house I had grown up in, feeling lighter than I had in years. I checked into the Fairmont Hotel 20 minutes after leaving my parent house. It was one of the few places open on Christmas, catering to travelers and apparently family outcasts like myself. The lobby was decorated with tasteful holiday decor, a large tree twinkling in the corner and soft carols playing through hidden speakers. Just you tonight? Asked the receptionist, a man about my age with a kind smile and a name tag reading James. Yes, I replied, suddenly aware of how this looked. Checking into a hotel alone on Christmas evening, still wearing a party dress, no luggage except my purse. I had a change of plans. James's expression was professionally neutral, but his eyes held understanding. I've put you in a room with a view of the city. The restaurant is serving a special Christmas dinner until 9 o'clock if you're interested. I thanked him and took the key card, grateful for his discretion. In my room, I kicked off my heels and sat on the edge of the bed, the events of the evening replaying in my mind. The hurt was still there, a dull ache behind my ribs, but it was accompanied by something unexpected, relief. My phone began buzzing almost immediately. The first text was from Sophia. What was in that envelope? Marcus is freaking out. Are you okay? I didn't respond immediately. My mother called next. When I didn't answer, she left a voicemail. Elena, this behavior is completely unacceptable. You've ruined Christmas dinner and upset everyone. Call me back immediately so we can discuss how you're going to apologize to Marcus. I deleted the message. My father texted, "Your mother is very upset. Please call." I turned my phone off. After a shower, I changed into the hotel bathrobe and ordered room service, the Christmas dinner special. It arrived on a covered tray: glazed ham with pineapple, mashed potatoes, green beans, and a slice of apple pie. I ate by the window, watching snow fall on the city below, Christmas lights reflecting off the white ground in bursts of color. It wasn't how I had imagined spending Christmas evening, but there was a strange peace in the solitude. No walking on eggshells. No bracing for Marcus's next attack. No pretending that everything was fine when it so clearly wasn't. I turned my phone back on around 9 o'clock, bracing myself for more messages. There were several missed calls from my parents and a dozen texts from various family members. But one message caught my eye. It was from Jessica. "Can we talk?" Not about the necklace. About Marcus. I hesitated, then replied, "Tomorrow. Coffee at Sunrise Cafe. 10 a.m. The next morning, I woke early, ordered breakfast to my room, and spent time journaling about the previous day, a practice Dr. Reynolds had encouraged. Writing down the exclusion, Marcus's cruelty, and my decision to walk away helped solidify my resolve. This wasn't a momentary emotional reaction. It was a necessary step toward healing. Jessica was already at Sunrise Cafe when I arrived, fidgeting with a napkin. The gold necklace was conspicuously absent from her neck. She looked up as I approached, her expression a mixture of guilt and nervousness. "Thank you for coming," she said as I sat down across from her. "Why did you want to see me?" I asked, not unkindly, but not offering any easy absolution either. Jessica took a deep breath. "After you left, everything fell apart. Marcus tried to destroy the papers, but Amanda grabbed them first. She read some of it out loud." Jessica's eyes met mine. "Is it true that he told you I was making fun of your apartment at Cousin Beth's housewarming?" I nodded. "And that you said my marketing job was just a hobby until I found a husband?" "I never said that," Jessica whispered. "I've always admired your work. I tell people my cousin is this amazing creative director who works with major brands." "And I never said you were too unstable to handle Grandpa's watch," I replied. "That was Marcus, too." Tears filled Jessica's eyes. "He played us against each other all these years. We talked for 2 hours, unraveling years of misunderstandings and manufactured conflicts." Jessica revealed that after I left, Amanda had confronted Marcus about other messages in the envelope, including texts to a woman who wasn't her. The Christmas dinner had devolved into multiple arguments, with Marcus eventually storming out, Amanda following separately. Your parents are trying to reach you," Jessica continued, stirring her coffee nervously. "They're confused. They keep saying you overreacted, but I think some of them are starting to see the pattern." I leaned back in my chair, processing this information. "What about the necklace?" Jessica's hand moved instinctively to her bare throat. "I took it off as soon as I got home. Elena, I had no idea. Marcus told me you said you didn't want any of Grandpa's things because they reminded you too much of him. He said you were too emotional to handle the responsibility of family heirlooms." The familiar sting of Marcus's manipulation hit me, but it felt different now, more distant, like examining an old wound that had finally begun to heal. "I want you to have it back," Jessica said, reaching into her purse and pulling out a small velvet box. "It should have been yours all along." I stared at the box but didn't reach for it immediately. "Jessica, I need you to understand something. This isn't just about the necklace or the watch. It's about years of being made to feel invisible, unwanted, less than. Even if everyone suddenly acknowledged what Marcus has done, I'm not sure I can go back to family dinners and pretend everything is fine." Jessica nodded slowly. "I understand. And I don't expect you to forgive me right away. But I want you to know that some of us see the truth now. Amanda left Marcus last night. She took their kids to her mother's house. She said she couldn't trust someone who would manipulate his own family for sport." I felt a complex mix of emotions: vindication, sadness for the children caught in the middle, and something that might have been satisfaction that Marcus was finally facing consequences for his actions. Over the next week, I stayed at the hotel, taking long walks through the city, reading, and having daily phone sessions with Dr. Reynolds. My parents called repeatedly, leaving increasingly frantic voicemails that ranged from demanding apologies to confused pleas for family unity. I didn't respond to any of them. On New Year's Eve, as I watched fireworks from my hotel room window, my phone rang. The caller ID showed my father's number, but when I answered, it was my mother's voice. "Elena," she said, and for the first time in years, she sounded uncertain, vulnerable. "We need to talk." "Do we?" I asked. There was a long pause. I found Marcus's old journals in the attic. From when he was a teenager. There were entries about you, about things he did. Things I thought were accidents or normal sibling rivalry. I waited. There was an entry about your butterfly project, about how he destroyed it on purpose because you were getting too much attention for a kindergartner. And about your friend Jake, how he made up stories to drive him away because he didn't want you to have a boyfriend before Sophia did. My mother's voice cracked. "Elena, I think we made terrible mistakes. I think we believed him when we should have believed you." The admission I had waited decades to hear felt strangely hollow. "Why now, Mom? Why believe his journals, but not me when I was 5 years old, crying and telling you the truth?" "Because." She struggled with the words. "Because it was easier to believe him. Because Marcus was confident and you were sensitive, and we thought we were protecting you by not making you compete with him. We thought if we just kept the peace, everyone would be happier." "But I wasn't happier," I said quietly. I was erased. We talked for another hour, my mother alternating between genuine remorse and attempts to minimize the damage. She wanted me to come home, to work things out as a family, to help them heal from this difficult time. "I'm not ready for that," I told her. "And I may never be ready for that. I need you to understand that your desire to have your family back together doesn't override my need to protect myself from further harm." "But we're your family," she said, the same plea I had made to Dr. Reynolds months earlier. "Biology doesn't automatically create healthy relationships," I replied, recognizing the words from my therapy sessions. "Family is about mutual respect, support, and love. For most of my life, our relationship has been one-sided." After I hung up, I made a decision that had been forming for days. I called my boss and asked about the company's expansion plans. We had been discussing opening a West Coast office, and I volunteered to relocate and head the new branch. 3 months later, I was settled in a sunny apartment in San Diego, with a new team of colleagues who knew me only as Elena Morrison, the creative director who had successfully launched innovative campaigns for major clients. No one knew about the family's scapegoat, the excluded daughter, the woman who had eaten Christmas dinner alone in a hotel room. My relationship with Jessica slowly rebuilt itself through regular video calls and occasional visits. She had ended her relationship with Connor, realizing that her attraction to him had been partially motivated by wanting to make me jealous, another of Marcus's manipulations that had worked better than he'd probably expected. Sophia reached out after several months, hesitant but genuine in her desire to understand what had happened. She admitted that she had often felt uncomfortable with how I was treated but had been too afraid of becoming Marcus's target herself to speak up. We began having careful conversations, establishing new boundaries and slowly building trust. My parents continued to call sporadically, always with the same theme. When was I coming home? When would I forgive Marcus? When would the family be whole again? I eventually told them that their version of wholeness had never included me as an equal participant, so their nostalgia was for something that had never truly existed. Marcus himself never contacted me directly. According to Jessica, his divorce was messy and expensive. His business suffered when several clients discovered his tendency toward manipulation and dishonesty. He had moved back in with our parents temporarily, which Jessica reported with visible irony. "He's in your old room," she told me during one of our calls. "Mom set it up exactly like it was when he was in high school. It's like watching a 35-year-old man play house in a teenage bedroom." I felt no satisfaction in his downfall, but I also felt no urge to help him or minimize his consequences. Those feelings belonged to the old Elena, the one who had spent decades trying to earn love through self-sacrifice. A year after that Christmas dinner, I received an unexpected package. Inside was Grandpa's watch, carefully wrapped, with a note from my father. This should have been yours from the beginning. I'm sorry it took us so long to see clearly. I held the watch for a long time, remembering Grandpa's stories about his grandfather carrying it through World War I, about survival and resilience, and the passage of time. Then I put it on my wrist, where it belonged. That evening, I called Dr. Reynolds for our weekly session. "How does it feel?" she asked, having the watch back. "Like justice," I said. "But also like closure. I spent so much energy fighting for things that should have been freely given: love, respect, belonging. Now I have a life where those things are natural, where I don't have to earn my place at the table, because I built my own table." "And how do you feel about the family situation now?" I considered the question carefully. I feel sad for the family we could have been if they had chosen differently. But I also feel grateful that their rejection forced me to discover who I really am when I'm not trying to please people who can't be pleased. Dr. Reynolds smiled. "You've built yourself a chosen family." She was right. My new colleagues had become friends. My neighbor, Mrs. Chun, brought me soup when I was sick, and I helped her with her garden. Jessica and I had developed a relationship based on mutual respect rather than family obligation. I had joined a book club, taken up photography, started dating a kind man named David who thought my marketing campaigns were brilliant and never made me feel like I was taking up too much space. 2 years after that Christmas, I received a wedding invitation. Sophia was getting married. Again. Apparently her first engagement hadn't worked out, and she wanted me to be her maid of honor. The invitation was beautiful, cream cardstock with elegant script, but it was the handwritten note that caught my attention. "Elena, I know I don't deserve this after how I failed you for so many years, but I'm hoping you'll consider being part of my wedding. Not because we're sisters by blood, but because I want to earn the right to call you family." I RSVP'd yes. The wedding was small, held in a garden in Portland where Sophia now lived with her fiancé, a gentle man named Robert who worked as a teacher. My parents were there, visibly older and more subdued than I remembered. They approached me cautiously, as if I might flee at any moment. "You look wonderful," my mother said, and for once, it sounded like genuine observation rather than obligation. "Thank you," I replied. "So do you." Marcus was not in attendance. According to Jessica, he had not been invited. During the reception, my father asked me to dance. As we moved slowly to an old jazz standard, he said, "I know I can't undo the past, Elena. But I want you to know that I see my mistakes now. I see how we failed you." "I appreciate that, Dad," I said. "But I need you to understand that acknowledgement doesn't automatically repair relationships. Trust has to be rebuilt slowly, through consistent actions, not just words." He nodded, tears in his eyes. "What would that look like?" "The rebuilding." "It would look like respecting my boundaries," I said. "It would look like not pressuring me to forgive Marcus or pretending that what happened wasn't that serious. It would look like accepting that I've built a life that works for me and supporting that instead of trying to pull me back into old patterns." "Can we try?" he asked. "We can try," I agreed. "But it has to be different this time." Over the following months, my parents and I began having monthly phone calls. The conversations were careful at first, stilted, but gradually became more natural. They learned about my work, my friends, my photography hobby. I learned about their retirement plans, my mother's book club, my father's volunteer work with veterans. We didn't talk about Marcus unless I brought him up, which was rare. They had stopped expecting me to get over it, or forgive and forget. Slowly, very slowly, we began building something new. Not the family I had desperately wanted as a child, but a relationship between adults who were learning to see each other clearly. On the 3rd anniversary of that Christmas dinner, I was having coffee with Jessica when she asked, "Do you ever regret it?" Walking away that night. I thought about it, really considered the question. "No," I said finally. "I regret that it took me so long to do it. I regret all the years I spent trying to fix something that was fundamentally broken. But I don't regret choosing myself." "What do you think would have happened if you had stayed? If you had just accepted the way things were?" "I think I would have spent the rest of my life making myself smaller and smaller, trying to fit into spaces that were never meant for me. I think I would have become bitter and resentful, or maybe just disappeared entirely. Jessica nodded thoughtfully. Watching you walk away that night changed something for me too. It showed me that it was possible to say no, to refuse to accept unacceptable treatment. I think about that whenever I'm in a situation where someone is treating me poorly. That evening, I sat in my garden in San Diego, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. My phone buzzed with a text from David. "How was your day, beautiful?" I smiled and typed back, "Perfect. See you tonight." As I put my phone away, I caught sight of Grandpa's watch on my wrist, its familiar weight a reminder of legacy and survival. I thought about that 5-year-old girl crying over her destroyed butterfly project, about the teenager who ate lunch alone, about the young woman who brought expensive wine and homemade cookies to a family that had already decided she didn't deserve a seat at their table. I wished I could go back and tell her what I knew now, that some tables aren't worth fighting for, that the right people will always make room for you, that walking away from cruelty isn't giving up, it's growing up. The watch ticked steadily against my wrist, marking the passage of time, marking survival, marking the moment when I finally learned the difference between being family and being loved. And for the first time in my life, I knew without question that I was exactly where I belonged.